So, Dr. Fight, would you be able to explain to us what exactly is happening in Revelation chapter 13, verses 15 through 18 about people not being able to buy or sell? What is this image? Who is this beast? What is this mark?
There are a number of issues involved there. Buying and selling can have two sides to a coin. Number one, there might not be anything to buy and sell because of famine, because of manipulated environments. That's one way of dealing with it. The other one is by controlling who can buy and sell. And very often, as we study these things, we can see that that is becoming a very, very strong possibility with the social credit systems that we are seeing being introduced into the world, where certain behavior is rewarded or punished. And with the digital monetary system that is being introduced, and I'm fascinated to see that the United States has now also launched a digital system, which by next year, they want fully implemented to retain the supremacy of the dollar. That's what the Federal Reserve just announced. But this digital monetary system is designed to give perfect surveillance as to what you are doing, what you stand for, who gets your money, how is your money spent, and probably will be able to be used in such a way that your money will only be spent, or you will only be capable of spending it, if you submit to certain social criteria. Now, that is something brand new. Now, a few years ago, as you all know, alternative monetary systems were introduced in the world, like Bitcoin, for example. And the whole idea of Bitcoin was to make you free from all the restrictions that are out there in the world. So Bitcoin was designed so that people could transact with other people without having to go through intermediaries, without having to go through companies, without having to comply to all the rules and regulations. So it was actually designed to be a freedom choice. And it took off like a house on fire. And Bitcoin roared in its climb to supremacy, and at one stage stood at $70,000. And then all these other national systems came in. The Chinese started introducing them. Some countries started introducing them. Many countries started talking about them. The United States is now going to introduce it. And the result was that this so-called freedom from Bitcoin started tumbling, that today it is only a fraction of what it was. Now, what does that mean? In other words, when you flood the market now with the systems that the governments are introducing, then instead of being a tool of freedom, it becomes a tool of bondage. And then, of course, being a digital system that is totally controlled by government and attached to certain behavioral actions, then the freedom ones will just disappear. So many of these coin structures or these monetary systems have just totally collapsed. The strongest ones are just hanging in there, and the world is moving into this surveillance system. And already we can see that governments want you to comply with certain ideologies. And we have this interesting development with Roe v. Wade at the moment going on in the world. And there's a certain ideology, and everybody is either on the one side of the debate or on the other side of the debate. But the moral issue is being pushed in the world. Can we see that? That the moral issue is being pushed in the world? Now, that moral issue, who was the champion of that moral issue? Wasn't it the Roman Catholic system that was the moral champion of that issue. But if you look at the system itself, God has not left us without witness. There have been numerous high-profile court cases showing that that which they stand for is not a reality within their own ranks. How are children being abused within those ranks? How are all of these issues swept under the rug while they give this moral exterior? But be that as it may, their moral high ground, in inverted commas, has now managed to gain newsworthiness. And church and state seem to be coming together with this decision. Now, it's only a matter of time before the other moral issues will also be associated with this kind of activity. And then it will be enforced by legislation. And if you do not comply to that legislation, then you will not be able to buy and sell, because the mechanism to introduce it is already in place. If you have cash in your hand and you can go to someone and buy your groceries, well, then you still have a measure of freedom. But if that is gone and you can only work through the digital method, then the issue of buying and selling can be totally controlled. And that is what the Bible tells us what would happen. And it would be associated with the mark of the beast. Now, only the beast can tell you what its mark is, no one else. So we have to ask the beast. So we have to first ask, who is the beast? Now, the reformers, based on sound Bible study, using the very symbols in the Bible, came unanimously to the conclusion, all the reformers, whether it was Calvin, whether it was Luther, whether it was Baxter, whether it was Ridley, whether it was Cranmer, whoever we're talking about, whether it was Tyndale, they all came to the exact same conclusion based on sound Bible study, that the beast was the Roman Catholic system. And the Roman Catholic system has said the mark of its ecclesiastical power is that it has the capacity to change God's law and move the solemnity of the Sabbath to the first day of the week. That is not just moving a day. That is attacking the very authority of God. Because God claims that his law is empowered by the fact that he is the creator and that he is the redeemer. And both of those aspects are ensconced in the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. On it you shall do no work. And then it lists who shall not do any work. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. Therefore he commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. In other words, by keeping the Sabbath day, you are honoring the authority of the lawgiver. Now, if you go to Deuteronomy, you have that same commandment, but it says because he took you out of Egypt, you are to keep the commandment. That is the redemptive aspect. So both by creation and redemption, you acknowledge the authority of your creator and your recreator by keeping the Sabbath. No one has the right to say, no, we will change that to the system of sun worship, and we will keep the first day of the week and thereby honor the lawgiver, who happens to be the beast, the system of Roman Catholicism, which wants to unite the whole world. As the Pope said, we have to meet our brothers in Egypt. Now, in order for us to meet the brothers in Egypt, we first have to have a famine. Now, the question is the world being prepared for a famine? Is the conflict between Russia and Ukraine creating the environment for a famine? So it seems as if history is repeating itself, and we are heading to the point where you have to go and find your food and your substance from the kings of the world, who will have total control, unless you have a little place in the country where you can provide simple food for your family by growing your own vegetables and making sure that, like the animals in the world, like the squirrels in the world, like the chipmunks in the world, store what you need for the little time of trouble, and in the big time of trouble, rely totally on God.